it's very nice. It's actually very refreshing to listen to someone advocating a plant-based diet, advocating the vegan lifestyle, and advocating all these things, but in a really nice, realistic way. Hello and welcome to A Doctor's View, a podcast looking at everyday health topics and life through a doctor's eyes. Please note that all opinions are my own and should not replace the advice given to you by your own doctor. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to Doctor's View. I'm Dr. Bolivios. One of my very first episodes was on a plant-based diet, and that was done at the request of a listener. And I was very grateful that she wrote to me because when I received the email, I was very skeptical about plant-based diets and I was prepared to absolutely slate it. I was really geared up for it, and almost like how I did for the homeopathy one. And when I went into the research of it and I started looking into the topic in more detail and started reading peer-reviewed journals and reading the articles and all the studies that were done on plant-based diets, I thought, wow, I'm actually very much mistaken. And I realized very quickly that following a plant-based diet is actually a very, very healthy alternative and offers a lot of health benefits if you follow it correctly. And so there are quite a few caveats to it, but if done properly, it can offer really quite demonstrable life changes. And since then, I've actually explored it even further, and I've interviewed people like Spiro Koulouris from last week's episode who have actually changed their lifestyle and health for their better in terms of their gout and had notable improvement by essentially following a plant-based diet. And joining me this week is a remarkable lady called Marina Yanay-Triner, who adopted a raw vegan plant-based diet as a result of a tragic assault that occurred to her. And she was looking to love her body again, and this led her on to following this diet and changing her lifestyle for the better. She's since started a company called Soul in the Raw, which is a fantastic resource for anyone looking to adopt a plant-based diet and offers great advice and some recipes, and I'll be honest, they all look absolutely delicious. So Marina, hello, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So I've looked at your website, I've looked at your blogs and your YouTube channel, and you've got quite an array of different media there, and you've explored the raw vegan plant-based diet rather than just the vegan plant-based diet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was actually in the past. So that's how I started out. And you and I we were just talking about evidence-based nutrition. So that was not evidence-based. And so I was just doing that because I was inspired by my mom's story of how she healed interstitial cystitis. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. So
Yes.
I believe she drank lots of water and essentially abstained from certain foods and actually made a dramatic impact on her health from what I've read.
Yeah, so it's a crazy story. So she actually went to doctors and did bladder installations, injections into just all the standard procedures basically. And unfortunately, it worked for like 10 minutes, but then didn't work after that. And just so your audience knows kind of what interstitial cystitis is, it kind of feels like a UTI. That's how my mom described it, like an infection,
Yeah.
but all the time. I mean, at
Mm.
night, it was very severe, and she couldn't leave the house for 8 years um, at all, just didn't have a normal life. And then she started researching, and she decided, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone without doctor supervision, to do a water fast. So that means she literally only drank water for a month, no food at all, none at all.
Gosh,
Yeah,
that's I'm having a very difficult time listening to that. That's quite extreme. And
it is. It is. So there's actually a center in California called True North where they have doctors, like medical doctors, supervising fasting. So
sure.
when anyone someone asks me about it, I say, definitely talk to them.
Yeah,
Don't do it supervised. It can be really dangerous. My mom, she had her own reasons for deciding that, but it's not something
sure.
that I would ever recommend.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we should make that very clear that we don't advocate doing this on a everyday basis at all, or anyone just randomly deciding to go into doing something like this because it's helped someone. You need specialist supervision if you're going to embark something like this, I
yeah,
think.
absolutely. But yeah, at True North, they have supported many people through it, and they're medical doctors. They test them, blood pressure, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what she decided to do, and it did remove the pain. Initially, it was extremely painful while she was fasting,
Mhm.
but after the fast was over, it removed the pain. And she actually did this twice. The first time after she fasted, it was less than a month. I can't remember how long exactly. She went back to eating her standard, diet that she always ate growing up.
Mhm.
Whatever. And even though all the pain was gone at the end of the fast, then it came back, and just the same symptoms and actually worse. And then she decided to do, and that's when she transitioned to raw vegan. So that's why I was like, okay, it worked for my mom. It's gonna work for me. Just didn't do any research, nothing, and just went straight into it.
Sure.
Um, which I think a lot of people do. Like they think, a diet works for someone, then it must be the right diet. And so I ate that way for 4 years. And as we were talking about, two of the things for me that I wanted to heal is emotional trauma. So I don't know of evidence that talks about healing emotional trauma through food. It definitely helps support, the nervous system and just
Sure.
functioning better. But I think just the food encouraged me to look for more ways of healing and actually want to heal. I started to meditate. I started to move. I really started taking care of myself, so that was
Mm.
beautiful. And then I had really severe PMS, which is very common. I find a lot of women suffer, which the raw vegan diet did not help. And I used to take like 10 painkillers a day, just mega doses to even survive the day. I fainted. I once fainted on a road, like just onto a
Gosh.
road. So it was very, very severe. And when I went to the doctor, she said, just take painkillers. And I didn't want that to be my way. So I thought that maybe that could help. And a raw vegan diet didn't help. So that's how really I switched to a whole food plant-based diet, which is what I think you talked about in your first
Yes.
class, and like all the amazing doctors like Dr. Greger and Esselstyn and the China study and Dr. Campbell and Neil Barnard, and there are many, many more. So I just get really excited that we have all this evidence that supports, whole food plant-based, and that's how I strive to eat. And what I talk about with my clients, my coaching clients, is
Yes.
to stick to the science that we have available.
That's fantastic. And yes, you're absolutely right. When I was looking into it, the whole food plant based diet seemed to be that was the way forward, and the evidence for it was very strong and quite promising as well. And what I found interesting was doing a plant based diet. If you're not following the correct one, it was actually in many cases worse than just not doing it at all, and that was quite shocking for me. Actually, it was. I think that's probably the things that I'd heard in the past that made me very skeptical about the plant based diet.
Yeah.
But when I got reading into the whole food side of things, which you're discussing now, that's where it's actually okay. This is where the evidence is, or this is where the health benefits are. And could
Yeah.
you you mentioned your mum, and I noticed on your website that you mentioned there was a experience of trauma from yourself, and that you found some solace with a changing of lifestyle and with the plant-based diet. Would you be able to talk to us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I talk about this a lot. I think it's really important to share. As a teenager, my first relationship was abusive, And there was a lot of trauma around it, both for my family and for me. And I actually think it has a lot to do with my mom getting sick as well. It was just a lot of stress on the whole family, because this person was welcomed into our home, and it was just really unexpected. And it took me a lot of time to even work through that there was something that happened, because it was a relationship, and all my friends knew this person, and it wasn't just a random person off the street.
Sure.
But statistics do show that sexual assault is much more prevalent in relationships, which makes sense because you have trust, and so
Mm.
it's much easier to break that trust than as you're walking on the street. So working through that, at first, I didn't really. I was really, in denial and just experiencing a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, which I was just reading a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about how PTSD is actually in the body, like it's physical, it manifests in physical stress. So it made so much sense to me because I had like digestive issues, which I still sometimes struggle with,
Hmm.
especially when I have like an episode of something triggering me, and then, it goes in hand. So it makes so much sense. And so that the emotional trauma for sure had some kind of physical impact on my body. And one of the things, for instance, that happens is that you always feel hyper vigilant. So
Yeah.
you're always scared for your safety, and it's chronic stress basically in the body. So once I started to read this and realize, and I saw my mom healing on the physical level, I really wanted to see, what's going on for me and what can I heal. I wanted to prevent having her disease if it was genetic, obviously. And just the lifestyle really helped me connect with myself, my intuition, which was very much, a broken connection because my intuition led me to this relationship, and so I didn't trust it for a long time. And so when I started to connect, then I started to really listen, like what I need, like things like meditation, being more in nature, and just living like on a whole different level and bringing more peace and quiet into my life has
Mm.
been transformative.
That's amazing to hear, and it's lovely to see the transformation that's happened, and seeing your website and all your media is absolutely fantastic to see where you've come.
Thank you.
Um, you mentioned the other things like the meditation, the yoga, and all these other lifestyle changes, and it's a slightly skeptical thing to say, but do you think it's fair to say that just doing obviously a plant-based diet or even the correct plant-based diet, it's not enough in its own right? You've got to do other things as well. You think that's fair to say? Like, for example, if you're still doing an unhealthy lifestyle and then following a great diet, it's not going to take away everything.
I think that's super fair to say. And I always, that's when I coach, we cover all the different things. Because when, even on my website, I have a section explaining how I overcame PMS.
Yeah.
And one of the things is meditation, is,
Yeah.
stress reduction. If you're stressed all the time, like let's say you hate your job, you hate your life, you're in a relationship that makes you unhappy, and you feel like a victim all the time. That was a big thing for me, is like feeling like a victim all the time, and feeling like everything was happening to me, not for me, and I wasn't creating, change in my life. I
Yeah.
think it's really hard being healthy in that way, in that state of mind, in that way of living. So I think it's like a whole package. It's the whole
Yeah.
lifestyle. It's not the food. But that being said, I think food is a huge part of it. So if
Yeah, I
I was
think you're right.
doing all the other things right and I wasn't doing the food right, I don't think it would work.
Yeah, I agree because it's like training to run a marathon or train to do all these, being very very healthy from a physical point of view, gaining your muscle strength and all the rest and stamina. But if you're having an unhealthy diet, or say even if you're smoking 20 a day after you've gone for a jog, for example, you're negating almost all the good work that you're doing. So it has to
Yeah,
be a whole,
exactly.
it's a mix of things. It's a collaboration of different lifestyle choices to give the overall health benefit. And
Yeah.
On that note, tell us about what you advocate from a plant-based diet point of view, because it is quite interesting seeing your recipes and comparing them to some of the other recipes I've seen, and it's yours look absolutely delicious on the website. So, do tell us how the whole food side of things and how we can help improve our lives that way.
Yeah, so I think that as you were mentioning, it's nowadays a lot easier to eat junk food vegan. There's a lot of processed fake meats and
Mm,
fake cheese and all that stuff. And I think that it's great as transition, like for a little while, if people really want to try plant-based and they're like really missing the meat, it's a good transition food for a little bit to go into the whole food plant-based, but I wouldn't stay there. And I'm sure you've seen the studies on like artery damage and all that kind of stuff.
yes, yes.
Those foods have oil and they have sugar and a lot of sodium and just very, very processed. So if someone is eating relatively unprocessed and they're still eating meat, it may be better than all this amount of processed food.
Mm,
So what I advocate for is for all the listeners out there, go and check out Dr. Michael Greger. He has an amazing app. It's called the Daily Dozen, and it lists out the food groups that you want to eat in a day, including exercise and water, beverage intake. And that's basically pretty much how I, try to live. So things like beans, like whole grains, vegetables, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and um, fruits, just all the whole foods, including fiber. So no like fruit juices because then you're just throwing away the fiber and just drinking pure sugar.
mm.
And oil, which is basically just fat without fiber, without carbs, and without protein. So just striving to maintain as much as possible the whole package. And then, of course, I'm also a human and I eat out. So
Of
I
course.
don't stick to these rules 24/7. But in my house, this is how I cook.
That's lovely, and yeah, it's the moderation side of things in terms of course, you're gonna go out. Of course, you're going to stray away from a strict diet, as it were, and it's human nature, and we have to enjoy ourselves, you know. And I mentioned in the previous episode on the plant-based diets, when I was looking into it, there's certain things that you cannot get in a plant-based diet, things like vitamin B12, which are only found in animal products, and there are some supplements that can be taken for that. How do you work around that side of things?
Yeah, that's a good point. So B12 actually comes from the soil. It doesn't come from an animal. It comes from bacteria in the soil that makes it. And because of, chlorination or just all the chemicals that we use, which are good because they prevent us from getting sick, they do kill that bacteria. The amount of people deficient in B12 are close to equal for both meat eaters and non-meat eaters.
Hmm.
So a lot of people have to take B12. So of course I take B12 and I tell everyone because I have friends who are vegan who say, I don't need it. And I'm like, no, 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 please. Let's not do this. You need B12. So a B12 supplement, vitamin D, if you're not in the sun, if you're in England, fortunately I live in San Diego and I'm in the sun a lot. So um my vitamin D levels are okay. But yeah, definitely test your blood and make sure to see if you need the vitamin D. And then omega 3, I make sure to eat flax seeds every day. And it's important also for that reason not to eat oil because most oils, like olive oil, coconut oil, are very rich in omega 6s. And for vegans, you're not getting the direct source of omega 3, you're
Mm,
something you have to convert. And that conversion can be disturbed if you have too much omega 6 in your body. Like 4 to 1 is kind of the max that they say to stick to, 4 being the omega 6 and 1 being
mhm.
the omega. But if you go to like 5 to 1 or 6 to 1, that's where it can get problematic. So that's why I try to do the no oil for that reason as well. And then flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and hemp seeds. Those are the only sources of omega-3 for us plant-based eaters. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then those food groups that Dr. Greger suggests, those are the ones that will have your calcium, of course, plenty of vitamin C, iron, just everything you need. So I would say just making sure you get the omega-3 is important, and then vitamin D and B12.
Thank you. Because normally the omega-3 oils, they would come from a fish source.
Right.
And
Yes.
unless you're pescatarian, there are pescatarians who do follow a plant based diet. I use the term loosely because they although they base their diet around the whole food plant based side of things, they do still eat fish to try and get the omega-3 oils that way. Have you come across many people like that in your field in terms of from your company?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was like that myself. So I didn't go plant-based like overnight. At first, I was pescatarian, so I would
Mm.
still eat dairy and fish. But for me, it was very easy to give up meat. I never enjoyed it. So I gave it up. And then over time, gave up fish, which I also wasn't that attached to. But the dairy was really hard. So that was the last step for me. It's very addictive. So if you read, there's a great book by Dr. Barnard called The Cheese Trap, and it talks about the addictive nature of dairy and how it works in the brain. So I was pretty addicted to it, and so it took me time to stop eating dairy. And yeah, there are many people who choose a, like you said, plant-based diet. So they base their diet on plants, but it's not fully plant-based.
Yeah. And they do offer some health benefits too, of course, than just a regular meat diet. So it's definitely something which, if you're struggling to go full plant-based diet, and I think in actual fact, if it was something I was to follow, it would be something along those lines. I think I enjoy certain things a bit too much to want to get rid of, to want to omit them from my diet, but at the same time, the evidence for the plant-based diet is quite strong. So it's something that I think if anyone's wondering how to go about it, maybe take the small steps, and you don't have to give up the things that you enjoy, you know, go the whole shebang straight away. You can slowly ease it in and still keep those things if you want. There are many people that are, like you say, pescatarian plant-based diets, or still eat the occasional burger or whatever. It's not a steadfast rule that you must only eat these things. It's
Yeah, I
a
think I think the more plant-based meals you have, the better. And we're all
sure.
doing our best. So there is a big push in the vegan community to go all in.
Yeah,
Some people can do that. I
yeah,
wasn't able to do it. And so I think that, yeah, taking those steps is great. I will say that a lot of it is fear in our minds. Like a lot of because it is a change, it's a big change, and it
yes,
requires a lot of things. For example, it requires asking for what you need from friends and restaurants and your community, and maybe being the weird one all the time. Oh, she's the weird one. So that it's hard for some people, especially people who feel more comfortable pleasing people, and
sure,
not stand out all the time, or introverts, which I'm an extrovert, so most of my friends are introverts. Know that they struggle with just always having to stand out and always asking for what they need. So there's a lot of that, but overall I would say, it's really not as hard as people think. It really isn't. I just had a great conversation on another podcast where actually the host, she actually wanted to go plant-based, and she's like, so how do you do it? And once I kind of explain, okay, this is breakfast, she's like, oh, this is not so hard, and I said, yeah, it's in our minds, so it doesn't have to be hard.
no, that's fair enough. And on that note, yes, do tell us, how do you go into a plant-based diet?
Yeah, okay, so my number one tip is definitely to meal prep. So on the weekend, I'll make a big batch of veggies, like in the oven on parchment paper or on a
Mm,
silicone. I'll just bake them. a couple of sauces that are really delicious. So I base my sauces on like nut and seed butters, and I just keep them in the fridge. I'll make a couple different beans and a couple different whole grains. And then during the week for your main meals, you just mix and match those things, and it makes it really, really easy. Doesn't have to be complicated. And so you can make things like pasta or pizza, falafel, sushi, like all your old favorites. You can make it the plant-based version of it. For breakfast, I would say to everyone listening that's like excited, curious to try, start with breakfast. I find it to be the easiest kind of meal to start with. I like to have oatmeal. Oatmeal is great, especially this time of year. So just simple oatmeal with some flax seeds that I add later because I don't like to warm up the fats. It kind
Hmm.
of oxidizes them. So just cook your oats. You can cook them with soy milk or just water. Add your flax seeds. I like to sweeten with dates or raisins and berries, and then you're done. It's very quick. I also like in when it's warm, which is always in San Diego.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I
because
know
it's
it's
cold
not
right now.
quite like that here.
Yeah, so this is more of like a spring summer breakfast. I like to do smoothie bowls. So I'll just blend greens, a lot of greens like kale, chard, spinach, and switch it up. And then fruit and flax seeds as well. That's how I get my flax seeds. And I also throw in some turmeric and black pepper, just a pinch for anti-inflammatory. That's really helped me with PMS is the anti-inflammatory foods. And eat it as a bowl, not as a drink.
Hmm.
So I chew it.
Hmm.
It's an actual meal. And then the third option that I like is I make my own soy yogurt, which is just I mix some soy milk and a probiotic, mix it together and let it do its thing. It becomes a yogurt, and then I'll add toppings and yeah, eat that. Some people love, whole wheat sourdough bread with avocado. You can do savory breakfast. So the options are endless and it's a lot of fun.
And I have noticed you haven't mentioned the things that the bad plant-based things like the sort of white pastas and the starchy potatoes and all the things that we all love and we love to eat.
I do eat potatoes. Potatoes have good stuff. I don't eat white pasta though. You're
Mm,
right. So I try to go to the whole foods as much as possible.
yeah.
So instead of white pasta, you can have whole grain pasta and you can have bean pasta, and there's so many options now, which is great. I like sweet potatoes. I like potatoes, all the different pumpkin squash. But yeah, just whole foods as much as possible is how people see a lot of great results with their health, their energy levels. It's quite amazing.
You mentioned smoothies. I want to ask you because I've heard so many conflicting things about juices and smoothies. And in some of the studies that I had read, they were saying juices are not good in as a form of plant based diet. And I can agree with that in terms of they are very sweet, and I advise patients who are diabetic to avoid just taking pure fruit juices. And we actually, if people are suffering from a hypoglycemic attack, we actually give them orange juice, to try and perk them up. And
Yeah.
so it just goes to show how much sugar there is in it, albeit it's fructose, so it's not the glucose, but it does eventually get broken down. And so, from a smoothie perspective, because I love smoothies, and I just wanted to get your take on them.
Yeah, I fully agree with the juice point. I used to juice when I was a raw vegan, and then when I started, actually studying the science. So I don't juice because yeah, it's fruit sugar, but it doesn't have the fiber. So
Mm.
the way you digest it is not the same. It's not slow. It's just boom, it's a sugar hit to your body. So I prefer smoothies. And from what I read, it is different because you are breaking it down a little bit. The fiber is it's almost like you already chewed it and now it's coming at you again.
Yeah.
So it is a bit broken down in the blender, but it does contain fiber. So if people have issues already, and of course, diabetics, they always can measure after they eat their blood sugar. I know this because my grandma's diabetic and she's been on a plant based diet and actually halved her medication in a few months. So
Really? That's
yeah,
actually amazing. That is
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Yes. Sorry to cut you short, so carry on.
Yeah, and Dr. Neil Barnard, that's I actually interviewed him on my YouTube channel, and he has a great book on reversing diabetes. So I studied that to kind of talk with my grandma about her diet. And so, yeah, so it's just, I think it's important to be more individual in that approach, like measure your blood sugar if you do have issues and see how it affects it. For her, it's fine. But for instance, oats don't work with her. Like for some reason, I guess they're very starchy or I don't know what's going on. So she switched her breakfast to buckwheat, porridge instead of the oats, and that's fine. So it's, yeah, you just got to test it out and check.
Sure. And I have to ask the name Soul in the Raw. And how did you get onto that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure how it came to me, but I always knew, even though at that time I was a raw vegan and now I'm not, and people said, oh, you should change it. And I don't want to change it because the way that I coach people is really, really, deep and soulful. So I like that part of it.
Hmm.
And to signifies just really seeing your heart and seeing yourself in the raw and, really connecting to who you are, because that's the journey that I've been on. And it's not just about food, like we talked about. It's funny, but the food part in my coaching is actually smaller than expected. Like people think, oh, it's going to be so hard. But in reality, it's so much easier. And then there's so much that opens up that we talk about. So that's the part that I really, really like working on.
So it's an entire lifestyle change, isn't it? The what you're
Yeah.
advocating and the company itself, the Soul in the Raw company, and just tell us a little bit about some of the other things that you advise your clients to do, as well as change the diet. I know you mentioned the exercise and the yoga and meditation. How does it all fit into one package? Because someone listening to this might be thinking this is a lot to take in, a lot to do in a very short space of time to pack in one day, as it were. So, how do you go about it?
Yeah, so I kind of see what works for each person. If someone is willing to wake up a little bit early and start their day with meditation, it's just 10 minutes, in the morning and before bed. And it really depends, on the person and what they need. Meditation, I feel like it helps everyone, and it doesn't have to be. I used to not be able to meditate at all. So for me, it's guided. I like guided meditation, and I record actually for my clients their own meditations and I send it to them. So just 5-10 minutes in the morning, that's really great. Being out in nature as much as they can, writing if it works for the person. But it's really about like working through their fears and not running away from their emotions and just staying present in their lives and connected. So whatever area needs work, we just focus on that. Like whether it's they're unhappy in their relationship, okay, how can we work on that? And what tools fit that person? Some people really don't like writing. Some people love it. Some people like to talk about things with others. And a lot of the times, the answers come from them. I don't tell them, okay, you have to do this. We can try something in our session. Like I literally guide them in our session. And if they love it, I say, okay, great. Now you can try this new habit. So and then it's resourcefulness that comes from them. I can ask them, what makes you so happy? What do you love to do? Okay, can you do more of that? 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes, and it makes a huge difference.
And Marina, what have been the biggest changes with regards to your health that you've noticed since starting this whole food plant based diet?
Well, so I had, as I mentioned, severe PMS, and it's gone. So it's still like I still get excited and surprised because it's almost like a trauma. Like every month I expect, just this massive amount of pain. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of pain that I felt um, during PMS. And so that's completely gone. So I'm like a new free person. Um, and a lot of energy. I am naturally energetic, but I would say that I have energy almost all the time, and even when I don't sleep well occasionally. And in general, I feel well, and I can experience that because sometimes, I'm sick or I have a cold or something. I just can't believe it. I'm like, is this how some people live their lives. It's just, I know that's a lot of my clients, they just don't feel well. I don't remember how I felt 7 years ago, but just being grateful for how every day in general I have energy, I work out, I lift weights, I do a million things, I meet people, I record, like just busy on the go all the time, and I just feel good, excited, passionate to live. Not to mention, I was very depressed, I was suicidal when I was a teenager, and yes, those episodes come, they do. I'm not happy all the time, but I just know how to live through that in a more graceful way. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very nice. It's actually very refreshing to listen to someone advocating a plant-based diet, advocating, the vegan lifestyle, and advocating all these things, but in a really nice, realistic way. And it's somewhat different to others who I've met outside of the world of podcasting, just in everyday life, and I think they have been probably more responsible for putting me off uh, this type of lifestyle than anything else,
Yeah. Well,
actually.
I think
Whereas
I think we get excited, we get really excited and we want everyone to be as excited as us and to try to go for it. And we're very, vegans, we're very passionate about it. I am an
yeah,
ethical vegan as well, for the animals and for
mm,
the environment, which if the planet isn't healthy, we can't be because we live on it. And so, yeah, I would love everyone to be vegan. But I know that I wasn't always vegan. And sometimes, if somebody would have told me you should go vegan, I would have gotten very upset and said, no, I don't want to. And so I don't think that's the way to go. I think it's about compassion and just knowing that everyone has their journey. And yeah, and I don't like to force anyone. So if anyone is interested, they will come to it.
Marina, thank you so much for sharing your journey and giving us the advice, actually, which a lot of it is on websites.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct?
Yes.
And I'll put links to the website, and the Soul and the Raw website
Perfect.
will be in the podcast description. And you've got some subscriber lists there which people can sign up to and get some recipes. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah. And there's also meal plans on there and courses as well, that online courses that help people go plant based. So all.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, and look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Thank
Maybe
you.
after I've tried a few weeks of this and seeing how I feel.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you. So that was Marina, founder of Soul in the Raw. I do apologise, there was some connectivity issues over our long distance internet call there. I hope it's been a useful episode in gaining a different perspective, a perspective from someone who actually advocates and follows a plant-based lifestyle, and a whole food plant-based lifestyle at that. It's always nice hearing how someone has changed their life for the better and become more positive as a person just by changing certain lifestyle habits and using their diet as a key focus point. I think is seems to be a wonderful thing, and it's definitely worked for Marina. So hopefully some of her positivity will rub off on others. That's it for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please do leave me a review on iTunes or Podchaser or whatever platform you enjoy listening to this show on. And feel free to email me at adoctorsview@gmail.com and visit my website at doctorsview.uk. And please feel free to send me some topics that you'd like me to discuss in the future. And as always, please look after yourselves, and I'll join you again next time. I'm Dr. Bolivios. Goodbye.